30 seconds until minions spawn. Minions have spawned.
It's freezing, so I'm just gonna go shop.
been slain.
Hmm.
But that means that I guess don't want the woman get this at background. And yes. But the chance of
Yeah. I heard even other vaccines are like 10 times as likely to give you clots.
Yeah, but if the chances of getting any clot out of a long time is like one.
Yeah. The J&J one.
Ally has been slain.
I guess based on this kind of argument, then perhaps that's it. I don't know. Because you don't want to get this. The cerebral break.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Fine, I can accept that. But there's no reason why it's not a book. And there's even some arguments. Much higher chance.
Yeah. I think getting COVID gives you a risk of stroke that's like way higher than that too.
But then people argue that it's healthy to what then yeah, then they should. Because there is no way you're gonna get. So the risk of COVID is zero. Therefore, the risk of getting that vaccine. So
Yeah.
I can accept that argument. But in countries where cases are rising, there's like I would give vaccine.
Right.
An ally has been slain. You have slain an enemy. Is unstoppable. Enemy killing spree. turret has been destroyed. An ally has been slain. Turret plating will soon fall. Your turret has been destroyed. Enemy rampage. Your turret has been destroyed. An ally has been slain. Killing spree. An enemy dominating.
Cal just killed me with the splash she one-shotted.
Double kill.
No matter who you ask or what year you're talking about, the idea of flying cars always seems to come up as cementing when the future has arrived. So what future were we promised? How far have we gotten? And how much further up do we have to go? I'm Marcus Brownlee, and I review dope new tech, but on this show, I'm rewinding the clock to look at the tech of the past that we thought would be our future. This is Retro Tech, flying cars. Hey, what's up? I'm PhD here. I know I'm unboxing something today that has something to do with flying cars, that it's this iconic piece of tech that apparently was going to usher us into this new era of personal transportation. We'll see about that. This is definitely the biggest box we've had on this show. There is no indication, though, anywhere on this box what it is. It's like a riddle. What would be a piece of tech that would promise to revolutionize personal transport, but also not fit in a smaller box than this? I'm guessing it's not a flying car. There's a giant wheel. Oh, is this a Segway? Oh, it's a Segway. I know what a Segway is. Okay. I cannot wait to try to ride this. It's really heavy. Oh, well, it has to be heavy because it's got a counterbalance. There it is. The original Segway. Is it a flying car? No. Is it even a hovercraft? No. Let's get into it. This is the Welcome to the Evolution of Personal Mobility pamphlet. Lots of warnings. Don't roll this over bumps. Don't ride this over curbs and steps and obstacles and steep slopes and slippery surfaces and loose materials. Whew. All right. Can I get a helmet? Okay. I'm going to be the expert. I'm going to put all the swag that came with it on. This Segway armband. The expert would probably have this on, right? It's too bad I'm too swole for this. I'll probably have to put it on my wrist. That is nerdy. Wow. I hate to break it to you, Segway, but this is the nerdiest part of this whole thing. There you go. Let's fire it up. Oh. Okay. I'm a little dizzy. I'll be right back. Wow. That was fun. Is this a flying car? No. But this is my segue into the next segment. I'm gonna have you check underneath your chair.
Oh, yeah, it's my buddy.
Oh, guys, it's the 80s. It's the 80s in a car.
DeLorean at DMC-12 with Mr. Fusion on the back. This is the flying car that most people think of when they think of flying car.
All right, I guess let's walk back to like the concept of flying cars in general. Why was it such an obsession for us?
It's kind of not surprising that Americans would be obsessed with flying cars because we're just a car culture.
The key to the automotive interest in the United States has been always that notion of freedom. Well, the automobile has brought with it a new way of life, and that freedom is just key to the American experience.
Cars are everything in America. Even though we don't have flying cars today, it's not because we didn't try.
Just an ordinary plane, but wait.
There's been multiple versions of attempts of cars that were supposed to fly, and they crashed.
One of the earliest flying cars that actually looked like it had a road to production was called the Aero car way back in the 1940s. The Aero car. It had the wings in the back that could turn it into a functioning airplane. And the 60-mile-an-hour car takes off.
Let's put traffic flows behind us and fly that wild blue yonder.
Is it a car that can fly, or is it just a plane that can be broken down? Cooler heads prevailed, and the Aero car didn't move forward.
Okay, so there were actually some attempts at flying cars for real. But how did science fiction impact like how we thought about flying cars?
Science fiction has really been obsessed with flying cars. Movies like Blade Runner and Star Wars and of course Back to the Future.
The first time I ever saw a flying car was in the Jetsons. The Jetsons have moving sidewalks, very similar to the ones we see in airports, television screens where they can video chat like we do with FaceTime, and they have flying cars. So you say to yourself, well, why not flying cars? Why can't I have a flying car in my garage? It's the ultimate fantasy for everyone. But obviously there are all sorts of challenges to making that happen in real life.
So science fiction can help us imagine the future, but just envisioning a piece of technology isn't enough to bring it into being. No matter how compelling the idea of a flying car may seem, the technology and the physics just doesn't seem to want to play along. So today, I'm meeting up with fellow car tech enthusiast Gally Russell from Hyperchange to find out just how close or how far we are from this future of flying cars. All right, so I guess the basic challenge for a car like this today to get it to fly is to get all the air underneath it.
Yeah, it's a first principles physics problem of literally moving all of this air super quickly with enough force to get some sort of lift off.
Getting all that air underneath the car, that sounds like a lot of energy.
To lift it off the ground, we would need 1.6 megawatts of power.
And that just gets you into the air and then you have to stay there.
Yeah.
Even if we theoretically solve that problem, how are we transferring the air below the car?
So there's two schools of thought of how we can actually get enough force at once to lift this thing. You got some sort of propeller system, basically like a huge drone.
Right.
And then you have Elon and Tesla working on literally repurposing rocket tech with all these kind of mini cold gas thrusters to get it to lift off.
Okay, so a system like this, if you were to build it into this car, how would it work? Where would you put it?
So this is where the system would go.
Okay, so the back seats are just gone?
Yeah, we're pushing the laws of physics. You need to use all the space.
So that's the cold, compressed air, the pumps, the thruster, everything's going back here.
Yeah.
That's a dramatic amount of space to remove from the inside of the car.
Yeah.
So basically to get this nearly 5,000-pound car off the ground, you would need around 1.6 megawatts of power for the car to hover with no forward movement. And this model's 100 kilowatt-hour battery would be able to sustain that hovering for about 3 to 4 minutes, as opposed to the nearly 400 miles you'd be able to travel if you stayed on the ground. And the calculations only account for the weight of the driver, so if you want to bring your friends along, your time in the air would be even shorter. All right, so if we're making our way into the future, The original idea for flying cars, though, was just like get from point A to point B. Maybe there's better versions of that feature that aren't flying.
The Tesla in some way embodies that, because what makes it so advanced is not that it can fly, but it has software. You know, it can kind of drive itself.
I wasn't around in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s when we were imagining flying cars. So when I first was growing up and thinking about future of cars, I didn't think they should fly. I thought, wow, they should be more like the high-tech stuff we have today. And now we're actually kind of seeing that start to happen. Our desire to innovate and create the next revolutionary technology is never ending. And so while we may still be pretty far away from a world of flying cars, there is another type of cutting-edge flying tech that we've been dreaming about for decades.
I need more hoverboard. Nothing captured the imagination more than hoverboards. I wanted one. I know as a kid, that's something you could talk your parents into buying you. A DeLorean, not so much. I mean, what's better than a skateboard than a skateboard that can lift you off the ground? And I remember as a kid believing that these things might actually be real. As a joke, Robert Zemeckis, before the film came out, gave an interview and said that hoverboards were real.
They've been around for years, it's just that parents groups have not let the toy manufacturers make them, and we got our hands on some.
Of course, it was all made up, it was all part of the marketing buzz, but it made so many kids excited that everybody wanted them.
But it never really came to any sort of reality until we started to hear about this revolution in personal transport.
So it's the early 2000s, and we start to hear this buzz about this transportation product from Dean Kamen, who's already a well-respected inventor. It was codenamed Ginger. Steve Jobs comes out and says, this next thing's gonna be bigger than the PC.
It is rumored to be the technological advance of this century, an invention that could change the way people live, bigger perhaps than the internet.
It's finally time for the big reveal. So we all tune in to Good Morning America, which was the biggest morning show of all time. Dean Kamen standing there talking with Charlie Gibson and Diane Sawyer.
They lift the curtain, and it is the Segway. It's the Segway.
Okay.
It's basically a scooter. The best part about that launch is Diane Sawyer trying to hide her disappointment at finally seeing this thing.
I'm tempted to say that's it.
There was something about the Segway that just evaporated people's dignity.
It kind of, I guess, lacked that cool effect, because let's be honest, once they removed the handlebars and they became hoverboards, people were going crazy for them.
This is what everybody's talking about.
It's like a Segway without the handle.
They're also referred to as hoverboards.
The 360 hoverboard, the antithesis of the Segway.
Celebrities are riding them, like Justin Bieber and Kendall Jenner and Martha Stewart, who is obviously the coolest. And then the other weird thing about it is that it caught fire all the time.
It got so bad that Saturday Night Live actually had to do a parody.
And now they're literally the hottest because they also explode.
Ultimately, they were a failure because they were a failure, but they also didn't live up to the thing that we all wanted, which was Back to the Future 2, hovering above ground.
Despite tech companies' best efforts, hoverboards over the years haven't had the best reputation. So I'm here with actor, writer, and comedian Michael Ian Black, and we're gonna test out a few of these models to see if any of them won't kill you. This is Dope or Nope. Michael, thanks for joining me. What is your experience with hoverboards over the years?
Almost none.
Okay, perfect. I guess we just get into the first one. Here it is under our desk here. This is what I'm used to.
Right.
I'm from this era.
So you have experience with this?
I do. Do you?
No.
Oh, this is gonna be
No,
good.
Marquez, I'm 49 years old. What this looks like to me is a stress fracture.
Okay. So you look kind of like this.
Yeah, that is not superior to walking.
Well, you just look so much cooler. This is already dope. I know I'm giving this a dope already. This is amazing.
I mean, you do look cool on because you have a kind of confidence on it that I don't think I'm gonna possess.
Oh, all right.
Oh, jeez. Oh,
So-
come on. Jesus.
All right, here.
Oh my God,
So you
I've
feel
never
flat?
felt older in my life.
So look at your balance.
I'm not trying to move. All right.
That's not bad. There you go. There you go.
Do I look terrified?
You look better than if you're walking at speed. Yeah.
Oh my God, you were really good at that.
I love this thing. I have to give it a dope.
Much to my dismay, I also have to give it a dope because I want to be able to do it.
All right, dope. Nice dope.
Oh, geez.
Oh boy.
I've never seen one of these.
It's called the air wheel.
To me, it looks like a rascal that you drive around in the grocery store, except that just so much less safe. I'll try it.
Wanna give it a shot?
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna get on
Do you
it.
think kickstand out and you just go for it?
Just give me a second.
All right.
I'm terrified.
Bailing looks a lot harder on that. But you look comfortable.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting. I'm sitting at something that I feel like I do fairly well. I know I look like I'm taking it right now. When you're too lazy to walk and even too lazy to stand, this is the gizmo for you. You wanna try it?
Yeah.
It looks much cooler on the other way.
Yeah, this is kind of ominous. This is a great solution to a problem nobody had. I'm gonna say that's nope.
That's amazing.
All right, next up. Ooh, that's heavy.
Wow.
Segway robotics.
I mean, I'm sold right here. Robot inside. The future is coming. Which is pervy. I'm sorry, that's perverted.
It's got a name, Lumo.
Open the box from the front. That's the front. Well, that seems to be the robot. Oh,
Look at the size of this.
here's the power button.
Does it balance itself and roll around by itself?
Seems to. I'm gonna get on it and see what happens.
All right.
It's a hoverboard in some respects, but I'm not even sure what it does. I know my feet go here. Much easier to get on than the other thing.
Oh.
Oh, jeez.
Oh my god.
I mean, it's cool, but what is its purpose?
I don't know. Oh my god, there's a transform button.
Oh, it transforms?
You transform it, the head swivels around, and it's a robot.
Weird. Okay.
Lumo, personal companion. Follow me.
Here you are. I will follow you now. Please watch out for the people around.
Come on. Come on. Come on.
Well, why do you need a hoverboard that follows you around?
It's your personal transportation, and it's your camera on wheels.
Hey, Lumo, follow me.
I cannot find you.
Hey, Lumo,
Stand in front of
follow
Here
me.
you are. I found you.
Hey, Lumo, follow me. Follow me, Lumo.
I cannot find you.
I'm right here.
Here you are. I found you. I found you. I found you.
Hey, that's a lot there right now.
I found you, I
sit.
found you.
Lumo,
I
stop
found
following.
you.
Find you. Please stand in front of me. I cannot find
Lumo.
you. Please stand in. There you are. I found you. I cannot find you. Please stand in front of. There you are.
Technology is perfect.
God, it's so cool, and I hate to say it, but there's just no good use of it, and I can't imagine it's cheap. So that's a nope.
I agree with your entire assessment. It's nope. Sorry, Lumo.
I cannot find you.
I cannot find you.
Although we're not quite there yet, in theory, riding around on hoverboards is a future that's within our grasp. So to find out just how close we may be now to that reality, I'm going to speak to a duo that spent the last 10 years perfecting their hoverboard technology. Alexander Duru and Philippe Malouf from Omni Hoverboards. So if you were to explain this hoverboard to me, someone who's never seen it, what is it and how does it work?
The hoverboard uses propellers. The propellers apply force on a larger area.
Using the propellers, that's the challenge, and to succeed with it, that in itself was the innovation.
The Omni Hoverboard has an array of 10 miniature propellers, which are powered by a bank of batteries in the center console and a handheld throttle that allows the rider to control the height, which can be as high as 100 meters. how do you think your hoverboard is different from the hoverboards that people saw in like movies and TV that they might be inspired by?
Well, one thing about the movie, Back to the Future Part 2, it was an extension of a skateboard. And a lot of people wanted to create a hoverboard that looked visually like the one in the movie. But for us to have a hoverboard that functions the way it does in the movie, we had to not care about how it looks. It's all about functionality. It's not like you're riding the vehicle. It's you yourself that's flying. You lean in one direction, you will go forward in that direction. It's like a surfboard, but you're surfing the air. It's biomechanical. It's an extension of your body.
It's a bit like you acquired a superpower.
I'm sort of picturing like a futuristic field where there's a bunch of people all sort of hovering around and going through these courses. It's a fun world to picture.
Yeah, it's fun just to fly. Like, it's a real trip. I mean, you know, some people just want to fly it. I think that's the best part of the hoverboard. The very idea that you're flying. It's a classic dream of mankind. I think the hoverboard could be the beginning of something.
All right, after all that, I guess turns out flying cars, aka giving everyone helicopters, is probably not the best idea. But I still love the idea of recreational, individual flight. Like, I think if you ask anyone what superpower they would want to have, a lot of people would say they would just want to be able to fly like a bird. So maybe let's keep working on that. Thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
What's the story with you and Red Skull?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I came across this last week, and someone tweeted me this cartoon, this comic, Captain America comic, and I saw this screenshot of Red Skull looking at a computer screen, and it said 10 rules for life. That was one text box. It said order and chaos, and there was a couple of other boxes, and I thought, well, that seems to be making a reference to my work. I mean, 10 rules for life is pretty close to 12 rules for life, and of course, the main themes I discuss are order and chaos. I mean, one book is about order, and the other is about chaos, and my first book is about both. So it's a joke, you know, associating my ideas with this arch villain, magic super Nazi Red Skull. And then as I looked into it more deeply, and as people sent me more information, it became clear that at least some of the inspiration for this Red Skull character in this Captain America variant appeared to be targeting, let's say, or satirizing or warning about my ideas. And so I've been playing with that ever since. I suppose on Twitter, people are producing memes now of Red Skull superimposed upon the picture of him, things I've actually said instead of the hypothetical things that the people who don't like me wish I said and then purposefully misinterpret. And so that's that. And I'm trying to make it into something playful. It's so absurd. It shocked me to begin with. I couldn't believe it to begin with, especially when I found out who the author of the comic book was. So, you know, he's an intellectual figure among the leftist community, relatively well known and politically correct. And I didn't expect it. It really threw me for a loop to begin with. I mean, it's really something to see yourself portrayed, let's say, parodied, satirized as a... I've been called a Nazi before. It's not pleasant, but this is one step beyond that. I mean, Nazi apparently isn't enough. I have to be a magical super Nazi. I mean, by implication. Well, really, it's so surreal and absurd that I couldn't believe it to begin with. And then I think what's happening with it is so comical because Red Skull is a demonic character. I mean, he's a satanic character, and in his looks and in his actions. And people are putting my words over his representation, and there's a jarring discontinuity between the visual image and the actual words, especially for the quotes that have been derived from my talks that are in some sense more straightforward and commonsensical, like, you know, clean up your room or don't lie. They're not exactly the sorts of messages that the most malevolent imaginable Nazi supervillain would dream up and promulgate. So I think we're doing a t-shirt based on this image a kid developed in Eastern Europe, which is a variant of the Hail Hydra logo, except it's transformed into a lobster. We're going to market a limited edition poster and then donate all the proceeds to charity. That's today's plan. That should be launched by tomorrow. So that'd be today's Thursday, April, what is it today? 11th or so? I don't even know what date it is.
April 8th.
It is the 8th. So yeah, I think that'll be up on the 9th, 10th of April. So I'm playing with it.
If that's not turning chaos into order, I don't know what is.
Well, it's kind of an interesting challenge, you know, and because I've been so ill, it's been very difficult for me to maintain my sense of humor, which is a terrible loss. You know, it's the best response to that sort of thing is deft play, you know, rather than outrage, even though it...
Welcome to Summoner's Rift. Seconds until unions spawn. have slain an enemy.
Please, no Trundle. Oh, there he is. I'm not gonna walk down by Scuttle now with Trundle there.
An enemy has been slain.
Recalling this bush in case he comes to gank. I should have chilled. We could have killed him. I didn't think he would come up that late. I don't know if we can fight him, man. Like, no HP. And misfortune now. Wow, nice job. Oh, he's gonna come interrupt Dragon. No, he can't now that he's around. I can't really gank him in his jungle either because he's not squishy. He's at his blue. I would tell him to be careful for a gank. I think misfortune worded. No, she didn't actually. Oh! I can follow his gank. He doesn't see. Oh no, he's up there. Yeah, I don't know. There's probably wards all over. Hard to get in. He's probably doing dragon, yeah. We can probably interrupt it. If I scan, they'll give away that I'm up here. I guess Lee's not gonna check dragon for me. I mean, he'll probably just get it at this point. Trundle can solo it pretty easy. The one time I'm actually here to gank and he's back. Oh, Trundle wasn't on it, wow. Oh, that'd have been great. I'm a little scared to ward the dragon. I think he's doing it. No, I'm pretty sure he's doing it unless he's baiting me into this bush. No, he's definitely on it. No? What? Oh. Don't worry. Might be in this bush bottom? No. Nah, you wouldn't be. Trundle is definitely looking bottom, so we'll try to chill down here for a little bit. How about ganking mid though? Maybe if he gets aggressive and goes in on that loose in. I guess I do have flash. Is it worth it for him though? No. And now I gave away my position so he could totally gank tomorrow. Oh, Sun is pretty weak though. Wow, that's a nice shot on Sun now. We can't really push it to him up. I should go shop. Wish I had a word for dragon. It's clear. Be nice to see Trundle. Trundle stop and try sneak drag. Nice ward. This another world. You could kick alt for something fancy. I don't think they'll actually fight when it's 2v2 here. I think he's just bluffing. Oh, my guy wants to fight.
A turret.
flashed for it. Flash key. Super kill Trundle. Nice.
An enemy has been slain.
Wonder where Rengar is looking. Oh, there he is. I'd be down to fight this 3v3. Oh, perma's done. The double stun from Sona ult and then Victor W. Where's it his E? Whatever is the trap on the ground.
Your turret has been destroyed.
Nice! At least I have ult now. Maybe we can clean some of them up over here. I wouldn't. He's out of mana. Could have flashed for him, I guess, but it had more shutdown money. Go look at the dragon. Nice. Maybe kill bottom on their way in. We're already so behind, but it's free, it's free. Okay, so there's Trundle, there's Misfortune. Got her flash too. A little afraid of Trundle down here. We could 2v1 him. So hard to fight. The water dragon, which is nice. Could get some healing somewhere. Careful for Trundle. Definitely coming around the back. He will probably scan, I'm guessing. Maybe I'll try to scan for him rotating. Nope. He's gonna try to kill volley, I bet. No. Where is he? Waiting for Trundle to make a play. That's lined up persona. I don't know if Sona still has ult or not. Don't know. Can't believe there's still 5 bottom. I guess they want the dragon. Yeah, what is Trundle and Xerath every drag, man? I went to flash for this fortune. Oh. At least scare them about the Baron. That's like 5 top to release in. Trundle is too good at zoning. Now with the back up there. Oh, shoot. Well, that sucks. Unfortunate. Oh, this guy can't stop his recall. Might just be it there.
Enemy rampage.
Maybe you could one of these guys out by themselves. Yeah. I kind of want to flash and get him. Because Victor, I think, can probably stop us from dragoning. Although it's not up for 15 anyway, so... Wait, we got the third one? I swear we gave them the third one. if I can pick anybody off from the back. What is it, 4 and 4? This Victor can kill me. Nice! I've always coming up. Pretty good. Away from more people.
Your turret has been destroyed. An enemy has been slain.
Can we while they're all top? Yeah, if it's warded, that's real unfortunate. Just do 800. Ken, don't want to fight the jungle. Nice. Good work, guys.
An ally has been slain.
Oh my gosh, Ben almost got it. Oh man. Oh, there would be a pink there too.
An enemy
it is outrageous. It's outrageous to the point of being surreal, and that's partly why it was so shocking to me. I couldn't believe that that could possibly be real, but there it was, you know. And many people who fancy themselves as my enemies have pointed out that, well, I'm probably so much like this Red Skull character that I'm just imagining that it's a parody of my ideas, but I'm afraid that's a pretty weak argument given the, you know, virtual word-for-word similarity of 10 rules for life and chaos and order. No, that's not a coincidence. Sorry.
We can just add it to the list of weird things that's happened over the last 18 months or so that you've now ended up in a Marvel comic.
Yeah, well, it's like a weird thing seems, I don't know. Yes, my life seems to predictably consist of unpredictably weird things, and I don't really know what to make of that. And neither my family as well, because it tends to throw them for a loop as well. Although my daughter at the moment is having some fun playing with this. She's also healthy enough to have regained her sense of humor, so she's quite enthusiastic about the opportunity that this lays out.
Newly elected US President Joe Biden promised to introduce a $15 federal minimum wage once elected, which sparked a renewed debate over the pros and cons of the policy. As I write this, the proposal has been voted down in the Senate, which is extremely disappointing, but shows that Econ 101ism is alive and kicking, I suppose. Since the dawn of time, the USA's federal minimum wage has stagnated or even fallen, as you can see here. In the early 80s, it was around $3 an hour, and despite steady rises in the headline value, it has only kept pace with inflation since then. As this table shows, the ratio of minimum to median wages is only 33% for the US, compared to 54% for my own country of the UK, or 69% for Chile and Costa Rica.
Yo, you know what we got here? We got an elastic product. You know what that means? That means when people can go elsewhere and get their printing and copying done, they're going to do it. You acting like we got an inelastic product and we don't.
In economics, this means the percentage change in one thing because of a percentage change in another thing. Stringer was talking about the change in demand owing to the change in the price of their product. But here, we will mostly be talking about the change in employment owing to a change in the minimum wage. So, an elasticity of -1 means that if the minimum wage increases by 1%, employment will fall by 1%. An elasticity of -0.1 means that if the minimum wage increases by 1%, employment will fall by 0.1%. You can see that the former would be hugely problematic, while the latter could easily be considered a price worth paying for higher wages. Beginning with a famous paper by David Card and Alan Krager in 1994, a wave of studies sometimes dubbed the New Minimum Wage Research have used careful empirical techniques to investigate the elasticity of employment with respect to minimum wage changes. Card and Krager looked at the effect of a minimum wage change using two adjacent US states, New Jersey and Pennsylvania, in 1992. New Jersey increased its minimum wage while Pennsylvania did not. This is a kind of natural experiment. When a policy applied to one area is not applied to a similar area, and comparisons between the two approximate the ideal of a lab experiment. The argument goes that if two areas differ only in the policy, in this case the minimum wage, any difference in outcomes between them, in this case employment, can be attributed to that policy. Card and Krager phoned fast food restaurants, which employ a lot of minimum wage workers both before and after the change.
God, you're greasy.
What they found was that far from reducing employment in New Jersey, the minimum wage may actually have increased it. The study made quite an impact. Reed Garfield, senior economist of the Joint Economic Committee, commented in 1996. The results of the study were extraordinary. Card and Krager seemed to have discovered a refutation of the law of demand. Economists were stunned. Because of these extraordinary results, they debated the results. Many economists argued that differences between the states were more than simply differences of minimum wage rates. Other economists argued that the study design was flawed. Since this, thousands of papers have been written in the USA and elsewhere on the employment effects of the minimum wage. One of the most pertinent critiques of Card and Krager was how narrow their study was. A single change in fast food restaurants in two relatively small US states should not be generalized to minimum wages everywhere. More recently, the frontier of minimum wage research has been led by people like Aaron Dube and his co-authors. They have mostly followed in Card and Krager's footsteps by taking advantage of natural experiments, but have substantially broadened the number of states they include, as well as the time frame of the studies and the depth they go into estimating the effects. For example, in a 2010 paper, Dube, Lester, and Bright found no employment effects of the minimum wage using 316 adjacent pairs of states. That's Card and Krager times by hundreds.
My God, I don't even know what that is.
Nobody does.
A 2019 paper by Sengis, Dube, Linder, and Zepera estimated the effects of minimum wages on the entire distribution of jobs, using 138 different minimum wage changes in the USA. The x-axis here shows the part of the wage distribution we're in, relative to the minimum. 2 means it's $2 higher than the new minimum wage. The y-axis shows the effect on employment at a given part of the wage distribution. Just below the minimum wage, 0 on the x-axis, a substantial number of jobs disappear, as shown by the negative blue bar, which makes sense as it's now illegal to employ people at that wage. But this is offset entirely by the appearance of jobs at or above the new minimum wage, as shown by the positive blue bar to its right. There are no effects anywhere else in the distribution, so this gain in wages for low-income workers is not offset by other workers losing out. The same paper looks at these effects over the long term, and it shows that the new jobs which appear do not disappear after a few years. I favour this type of natural experiment approach. It's transparent, and the core of close comparison between pairs of real
One thing that's really important to keep in mind when we talk about like wage impacts is, and I notice they do this a lot when they go back and forth on the Seattle studies for how those wages have impacted new workers. I think it's really important that we disaggregate workers from each other to make sure that you're not positively impacting some section of the economy while dramatically negatively impacting some other section. So for instance, I think that it's pretty well understood that as long as minimum wages aren't set too high, generally they have favorable impacts. However, even in those cases, even if on the aggregate wages paid to certain workers are higher, and even if on the aggregate employment seems to be either equal or boosted, the problem that you run into is that you start to disproportionately impact more narrower sets of workers. So for instance, workers with only high school education tend to lose out on these deals, and then more educated workers or people that are doing better socioeconomically already are getting like bigger gains with the minimum wage boost. Tends to be the arguments that I hear.
regions keeps the method grounded in empirical reality, instead of blinding us with complex statistical methods. But I should say that it's not the case that every study has found no effect like this. There are dissenters within this literature, specifically economists like David Newmark and his co-authors. Overall, though, most systematic meta-analyses find a small but statistically significant negative elasticity of employment with respect to minimum wage changes. Having said that, these studies also show evidence that there is a bias towards publishing negative estimates. Why that's the case, I'll leave you to figure out. So, how does one make sense of such a vast and tricky literature? Well, not the way the CBO does it. To give you some background, the Congressional Budget Office is an official but non-partisan entity in the USA, which produces research on important policy topics. Their recent report claimed that raising the minimum wage to $15 would lead to 1.4 million job losses, a pretty concerning figure. Where do they get their estimates from? Vorch said that he'd have to get...
Something else that I also take issue with so far, now it's possible he'll address other things I've said, is, again, when we're talking about boosting the minimum wage across state lines or whatever, when we're doing these comparisons between control cities and whatnot, the 15 an hour minimum wage bump is huge. Like if I were to say, like, is drinking 20 gallons of water bad for you in one day? And then somebody were to start flooding me with studies showing like, well, look, increased water consumption is good. When these people drink more water, it helps. Actually, you're totally wrong, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, well, hold on. Like, we're not talking about just increasing consumption of water. We're talking about a dramatic increase in consumption of water. I don't know if these other studies are necessarily valid. I don't know if it's valid to look at prior, like, small bumps in minimum wages between different states and say, like, oh, well, look, well, 15 an hour should be fine, right? Because then at that point, we could theoretically argue for 25 an hour or 35 an hour or 50 an hour, right? I think we need like more to see more dramatic increase in minimum wage. It's like I think the Seattle study is good. Even that isn't as dramatic as what's being proposed. Aren't all these changes only like $1 a year per less? I think it's within $2 a year. We looked at that New Jersey one at one point for the fast food. I don't remember what the increase in the minimum wage was, but yeah, it's nowhere near the dramatic level that the 15 an hour stuff is.
Textbook out to understand this debate. I'd hate to be the reason that anyone had to read an econometrics textbook, so let's save him from having to do so. Uh-oh, too late, bruh. The first thing to say is that this report was kind of opaque, even for someone who is used to reading this type of thing. It's full of phrases like CBO concluded and in CBO's estimation, often with little to no explanation. They select 11 studies from the literature, but why these 11 were chosen is not explained. The CBO then computes the effect of minimum wages on employment from an average of the 11 studies. But they increase the magnitude of the actual average because of a really weird thing they do where they randomly drop some of the studies they use and recalculate the average with those studies missing. I don't know why this method is chosen or how it really works because, again, it isn't explained. Jude himself has commented to similar effect, though in more measured academic terms. He says the CBO overemphasizes the negative estimates in what we already know is a literature biased towards finding negative estimates. He points out that more recent, better quality research has found employment elasticities of the minimum wage closer to zero. As an alternative, he suggested his own 2009 review for the UK Treasury. This only includes studies which estimated the effect on employment for the same workers whose wages are increased by the minimum wage, which gives a clear picture of the trade-offs faced by the workers actually affected by the policy. This is known as the own wage elasticity. Along the y-axis is the study. The dots represent the estimated effect size for that study, with the bars either side of the dots representing the uncertainty surrounding that estimate. Jude concludes that based on this review, the average elasticity is minus 0.04, meaning that a 25% increase in average wages for a group affected by the minimum wage should reduce employment by 1% for that group.
Also, I feel like this elasticity, I don't know if there's... I would hope that like people that do econometrics probably would know this, but that elasticity is probably going to be a function and not just an integer. What the fuck am I thinking of? F of x equals 5. What would you call that? Like your elasticity is constant. Yeah, Jesus. Your elasticity is probably going to change depending upon how far away you move from whatever your baseline value is. It's part of basic elasticity theory. Okay, good. So like for instance, like I can probably demonstrate a very low a very low elasticity in a product at very low price changes. So for instance, if we start with $1 for a can of Coke, the difference between like the demand for Coke at $1 versus $1.05, the elasticity is probably going to be very, very, very low, I would imagine. But once we start to move further and further away, I imagine that value is going to start to change more dramatically. That like if we increase it from $1 to $1.10, you know, it's going to change between $1.10 to $1.20 or $1.20 to $1.50. That elasticity is probably going to grow a bit and then slope, I guess. How would that look on a graph? What if I had to like guess what this curve would look like? I guess it would look like probably something like this or whatever, where like you're if this is our elasticity here, I don't know if there's like a textbook on this, I'm sure, but like I imagine that like little changes right here probably wouldn't matter much, but as you start to change, it's going to get like the elasticity is going to grow significantly until it like tapers off here, whatever. That would be like my guess. I say that would be my guess, but I'm almost positive that's what would happen. Right. An S curve, sure, okay.
There's a lot of debate over whether $15 an hour is enough, and Jude also comments on how high the minimum wage could be. Across US states, the best evidence suggests that the employment effects are small, up to around 59% of the median wage. Evidence using sub-state county level variation found this to hold even in lower wage counties, where the minimum stood at up to 81% of the median wage. Research conducted for this report also finds that in the 7 US states with the highest minimum wage, where the minimum is binding for around 17% of the workforce, employment effects have been similarly modest. Now, to return to demand and supply. Strictly speaking, this evidence alone doesn't contradict the supply and demand model. It could just imply that the curves have a specific shape, albeit an unlikely one that contradicts other evidence. I'll provide a reference for that below. But here's my bottom line. When effect sizes are this small and uncertain, it's suggestive of something that's just not that interesting, whether theoretically or politically. As the economist Thomas Leonard pointed out, this whole debate does prompt the question, what evidence would convince you that your theory is refuted? Let me illustrate this with one more recent study. This shows a bunch of different elasticities for 16 to 19-year-olds, the group most likely to be affected.
I'd also like to say, too, that like when an economist uses like a model like supply and demand, I would hope, okay? Maybe economists are really fucking stupid. Maybe we're all smarter than economists, right? Would hope that when an economist uses a supply and demand curve for things like employment, it's not literally, like, our graph isn't literally going to be called U.S. employment. Here it is. This is the whole supply demand for all of the, right? The supply and demand is going to be like relevant. It's going to be incredibly localized to different sectors of the economy, right? That like your quantity demanded of labor is going to change significantly based on our locality, like what cities we're on our industry, based on what types we're talking about, on the types of workers we're talking about, right? Like, so these supply demand curves probably still work pretty accurately, but they're going to be incredibly localized to different areas. It's not like we just draw one giant fucking aggregate supply demand curve for the entire U.S. fucking economy, right? That would, if people do that, it would be incredibly fucking stupid. Like, Jesus Christ, but yeah.
By the policy. As you can see, in most cases the blue horizontal lines cross zero, which is given by the red vertical line, indicating that the effects estimated are not statistically distinguishable from none at all. As a contrast, consider a more straightforward question. What is the effect of the minimum wage on wages themselves? This might seem tautological, but if the minimum wage is low or is not properly enforced, we may not observe an effect. Unlike our previous figure, the estimates here are universally positive and statistically distinct from zero. This is the pattern one would expect to observe when the relationship one is estimating is strong and reliable. The minimum wage effects do not look like this. Higher labour costs as a result of the minimum wage are obviously a thing, but employers often have more bargaining power than workers, so they can afford it. Increased pay can motivate workers, leading to higher productivity. It can make them more likely to stay, reducing turnover costs from hiring and firing. And at the economy-wide level, the minimum wage increases the spending power of workers, which will increase...
Okay, you know what I would like to see done as an experiment? Just in one place.
D, $10. This guy's completely ignoring dead weight loss. The cost of a deal not done. The hire not made kitten to incurring cost. Also, businesses on average don't stop growing, they change their priorities.
Well, I imagine that we try to account for that with unemployment, right? If we're increasing the unemployment, we're also not higher, right? Something that I would like to see done, just try it as a mass experiment in some huge firm or whatever. I wish that there was like a combination of like hourly wage plus like wage for jobs done. Because I guarantee you, every single fucking job in the United States, there's a lot of people that just fucking lazy about, because why the fuck would you work any faster when you're not getting paid anymore? Like, I know that at the casino, like when you're assigned like certain tasks for like restaurants, like there are some things that you could do in like fucking 5 or 10 minutes, but like why would you? Why would you bust your ass and bust tables hard, you know, like wrap silverware quick, do your prep work fast? Like fuck no, like you know that you can spend about 2 hours doing, you know, prep for the kitchen. Like fuck it, why the fuck would you? Why would you bust your ass and do it in 20 minutes, right? I wish that there was like some type of like payment per task or something, that a system like that would be tried out, because I feel like you could take certain workers that work 40 hours a week, pay them their same wages, but they could work 20 hours a week and do the same amount of work. I know this is the case. I wish that there was like more like a drive towards this in the economy or something. Like Jesus fuck. Yeah, because if you work harder in most hourly jobs, that means you just get more shit to do. You don't get a break. Like if I'm assigned to do some task for 2 hours and I get it done in 1 hour, I don't get to jerk off for an hour. They give me some other shit to do. Like the fuck? What the fuck is the point of that? Like,
demand for businesses. I'm happy to debate the importance of these different effects, but the standard economic approach only helps us with a tiny part of them, if at all. And arguably, the effect on employment is so...
Yeah, or the worst case scenario is your supervisor's like, oh, well, no more work to do. Time to send you home early. It's like, wait, I got bills to pay, motherfucker.
...uninteresting that it's distracted us from other questions, such as the effect of the minimum wage on mental health or poverty. So now we know that the minimum wage just doesn't have the kind of reliable negative effect on employment we'd expect if the theory were useful. But now I want to talk about another, similar...
Okay, so again, I just want to qualify. Now we know that minimum wage set close to what price floors we'd already imagine are, or the price floor that's set close to what the natural minimum wage would be, it has little effect. That we haven't proven that a 15 an hour minimum wage wouldn't have that effect, right? The closest he got was when he talked about when median wages are set at 59, or when a minimum wage is set to 59% the median wage, which nationally would work out to around 12 an hour, I believe, or like 11.59 an hour or something, or something like that. It wouldn't be 15 an hour. But.
Prominent example, rent control. It's no secret that both house prices and rents in many countries have skyrocketed over the past couple of decades, especially in Anglo countries. Housing is probably the main cost for most people, so this has prompted questions about whether governments should do more to help people cope with these costs. The most direct policy to do this would be rent control. Rent control isn't a hugely popular policy, although it exists in a few countries and localities. For example, New York City, as discussed by the Friends in the popular sitcom, Friends.
But more important, because rent control is a freaking steal.
In their debate on housing, philosopher Ben Burgess and streamer Destiny also discussed the policy.
Rent control is like, it's like $14.90, not 11. I'm almost positive it was around $12. We looked this up. The dude's ground up. You want to link a source for it? Go for it. Or we can just do the math, I guess. The median wage in the U.S. is $35,977. So if we times this by 0.59, and then we divide that by 12, so this is $1,700 per month, and then in a month you work 40, like about 160 hours divided by 160. It's around $11 an hour. So it's lower than what I estimated. I'm citing no opinion. I don't really like what he's written on minimum wage much. But I mean, we can literally do the math on this now to figure it out. I made you link something and then you got muted. Good man.
One of these few issues that economists broadly agree is a garbage policy. It doesn't help we want it to help. It usually hurts we want to help, and just doesn't usually get what you want done.
Destiny was correct. Opposition to rent control is possibly the area where economists agree the most. A 1990 poll had 93.5% agree that a ceiling on rents reduces the quantity and quality of housing available. A 2012 poll asked for economists' views on the statement, local ordinances that limit rent increases for some rental housing units, such as in New York City and San Francisco, have had a positive effect over the past 3 decades on the amount and quality of broadly affordable rental housing.
I'm really curious why he shows the IGM polls on this. These are the IGM polls, aren't they? They are. Why does he show the IGM polls on this, but he doesn't show the IGM polls on the 15 an hour thing? That really makes me wonder. Because on here, 50% or more of economists agree that 15 an hour would increase unemployment, and that it should be pegged at something different. I wonder why he didn't show the IGM polls on the which would different.
81% of economists disagree or strongly disagree with this statement, with answers including, next question, does the sun revolve around the Earth? Unless all the textbooks are wrong, this is wrong. The planets are lined up here, theory and evidence point in the same direction. The award for the strongest statement about rent control, however, goes to the economist Assar Lindbergh, who claimed, in many cases, rent control appears to be the most efficient technique presently known to destroy a city, except for bombing. To understand where all this strong opposition is coming from, let's return to our supply and demand diagram. Instead of the market for labour, we are now looking at the market for houses. Apparently they work in exactly the same way. We have rents on the y-axis instead of wages. We also have quantity of houses rented on the x-axis instead of employment. Again, the supply and demand for houses should balance with rents at R star and quantity at Q star. What does rent control do in this situation? It's represented by the horizontal line RC, which forces rents down. At this low rental rate, the quantity of houses supplied is lower than the previous equilibrium.
Bob Savvy D at $5. I don't agree with MW, but why are you leftists not recommending a tiered wage by age adjusted for inflation?
I don't think I qualify as a leftist. I don't really like minimum wage that much at all. I think there should be other forms of cash transfers. So things like the earned income tax credit, like not deductible, refundable tax credits, I think are way better ways to target this type of policy. I think minimum wage is just way too like broad a hammer. You're just swinging around like a sledgehammer trying to fix a much more nuanced problem.
Even though more people want to rent, we have a shortage and a fall in rented units compared to the free market. I want to say outright that there is more evidence for the predictions of the supply and demand model for rent control than for the minimum wage, depending on how you interpret it. But the blanket opposition to rent control that derives from this is hugely overstated, and Econ 101 reasoning is, again, more of a hindrance than a help for understanding the debate. First, what does it mean for the quantity of housing to be reduced? I would contend that the supply-demand model can mislead people into thinking that the reduction is in housing supply, rather than the number of houses specifically used for renting. The 1990 poll mentioned above failed to distinguish these two clearly, and in the debate with Destiny, Ben Burgess largely accepted this framing, contending that you could compensate by building more housing.
Because if we just have rent control, there's going to be far less investment in private housing. There's going to be far less private housing built. But if you're building a lot of public housing to make up the shortfall, then it's literally, you could accept your premise. You could accept what the economists are saying and still think that it's just irrelevant to that package of policies.
Why not just
Undefined this has
Building
joined
more
the
housing is good,
liberal
but
nation.
reduction in rental housing doesn't mean that houses disappear. There may just be a corresponding rise in ownership. Our concern is surely whether people are getting the houses they need, not whether they're renting or owning them. We could have a debate about the relative merits of renting versus ownership, and which demographics are more likely to use one or the other, but it's not immediately obvious to me which is more desirable. Second, rent control captures a wide variety of different policies. The standard demand-supply analysis only depicts a straight-up cap on rents, whereas modern rent control just limits increases and allows for inflation in landlords' costs to encourage maintenance. Such provisions are common and common sense. For example, if you're worried about rent control discouraging construction, exempt new buildings, like Berlin. Recently, a Bloomberg...
There's a whole... Well, he might be... Yeah, maybe he's about to talk about that. Hold on.
Hi Destiny, I started watching your content about a year ago and I just want to say that I really appreciate you and your honesty regarding your thoughts and stance on topics.
Oh,
I
thanks.
used to be far right, now more centrist. Much love, my man.
Thanks, buddy. The problem with rent controlling, like buildings before that were constructed before a certain date, and then making all the newer construction to be exempt from the rent controls, is that you cause like a huge explosion of cost or price of those later buildings as well. So, for instance,
Undefined this has joined the omniliberal nation.
So, for instance, like if you've got a city and there's 50% of your housing stock is now restricted by rent control and the other 50% isn't, the price to rent on the non-restricted ones is going to increase because that's what all the new development is going to take place, right? Like people that are going to develop new buildings, because all the other buildings, fuck, what am I? Hold on. Fuck! Oh my god, the donuts just totally fucked my train of thought. I don't even remember what I was going to say now. If you have a city and you restrict some buildings to rent control, and the newer buildings are no longer rent control restricted, the old supply is not going to be renovated anymore. A lot of it is going to be converted to condominiums, things that can be bought and sold because people are going to rent it. And then the newer stuff that gets constructed is going to end up being like a higher cost for people coming in. It's going to be more expensive than the prior rent control supply. That's what I was looking for.
Seriously appeared in everyone's trends on Twitter, discussed the impact of rent control in Berlin, which froze rents on older houses and allowed tenants to force landlords to lower existing rents. True to form, the article claims, if populism on the political right corrupts democracy, populism on the left ruins economies. It's based on a report which is in German, and fortunately I'm fluent, so I was able to consult the original document. Just kidding, I'm English. We'll have to go on the article itself. Some of the outcomes it chooses are kind of strange. The results clearly show that rents have plummeted for those affected, a huge benefit which is downplayed. The article charges that...
Real quick! Rents plummeting for those affected isn't necessarily a good thing, because we didn't want to reduce rents for people. This is what I mean when I say rent control doesn't help always, we want it to help. We don't want to reduce rent for everybody in a city. We just want to reduce rent for people that can't afford it. That's the issue, right? So just because a reduction in rent is taking place, you can argue that's a success of the policy, which it arguably is, but we don't really want to reduce rent for everybody. We want to target certain sectors of the population.
Rent controls have reduced house prices, as if that's definitely a bad thing or somehow unexpected. It seems to me that both more affordable housing and lower rents might be considered a good thing by some people. The article uses a couple of graphs which apparently show the policy has had negative effects.
The reason why those places being worth less is because it means that people aren't going to reinvest in them. They're not going to update them, they're not going to renovate them. Like that reinvestment just doesn't take place. So people argue that those units being worth less and less is a bad thing.
Effects. One shows that prices in uncontrolled units have risen.
He must know this, though.
Since the policy. But from this graph, it's hard to see whether this is really a change or just a continuation of a previous trend. The graph doesn't go back far enough for us to know. And even if it is true, it may just be because the uncontrolled units are new. You could say exactly the same thing for their graph showing that the number of rental apartments has declined, especially since they follow this up with a graph showing that the supply of unregulated units has outpaced other German cities. Somehow, this is also framed as a bad thing. As you're all now budding natural experiment enthusiasts, I know what you're going to ask. Is there any more credible evidence than this crap on rent control? And the answer is some, but not enough, and it's mixed. One of the most recent and commonly cited papers on this topic is Diamond et al., which uses the sudden introduction of rent control to older houses in San Francisco in 1994 and compares them with more recently built units, which were exempt. Let's take an in-depth look at this paper, as I think it raises some interesting questions. The paper claims that the policy led to a 15% reduction in rental units, although if you unpack this, it's actually a combination of 8% being converted into owner-occupied buildings, with a further 7% being converted into rental units which are exempt from rent control, which isn't a 15% reduction in rental units. The paper does show that residents of both owner-occupied and exempted units are likely to have higher income, which is a cause for concern because it favours richer residents. There are conflicting effects though. Part of the reason for the higher income residents is that rent control leads to higher maintenance and upgrades so landlords can increase rent. We can see on these graphs that top left, rents fell, while top right, redevelopments rose, and bottom left, conversions rose, and bottom right, repairs rose. This suggests rent control does increase quality, in contrast with economist poll answers that we saw earlier. Rent control also means existing tenants are more likely to stay, which is more...
Okay, I'm too lazy to go through this paper. I should do this instead of just citing something in my subreddit, but supposedly he got this... Apparently the Diamond et al. Study, this guy says he takes issue with it. And he's going over around 28 minutes, and I think he gets something wrong with figure 8. The top isn't showing rents going down, it's showing renters going down. Maybe he means rent is in the number of people renting and not the price of rent, but if he meant the latter is just wrong. Perhaps I misinterpreted the point of the top two graphs, but I think the implication is that the number of renters in redeveloped housing went up, less than the number of renters in rent-controlled buildings went down, suggesting there's one group of people who were priced out of their homes. Also, he claims that rent control increases quality, but not by increasing the quality of rent-controlled buildings. Landlords redevelop buildings to avoid rent control, and the redeveloped housing was probably more expensive than what people could afford. He then takes issue with the paper's framing of rising income inequality, arguing that the alternative is only having rich residents, but that's the inevitable result of high inequality. The paper suggests that this is a problem because this prevents new middle-class residents from moving in. This is already unfair to future residents and potentially deleterious to business growth, but if only rich people can afford to migrate to a city, that means that demand for higher cost amenities will eventually outstrip low-cost amenities, and people living in rent-controlled housing won't be able to afford anything except their rent. Unlearning Economics presents their arguments as if the authors are just dogmatically shouting inequality bad without really justifying it, but the problem isn't just some inequality statistic goes up, it's that inequality is bad knock-on effects.
Pronounced the minority group. The strangest spin in the Diamond paper is to frame this as a bad thing too. It appears rent control has actually contributed to the gentrification of San Francisco, the exact opposite of the policy's intended goal. Indeed, by simultaneously bringing in higher income residents and preventing displacement of minorities, rent control has contributed to widening income inequality of the city. Keeping existing residents in the area while rich residents join is a bad thing. The solution is obviously to have only rich residents so the income inequality in the area is low.
Look at this place. So what do you, I don't know how he misunderstands this, or maybe I'm just being uncharitable. I don't understand. I don't know what he means by this point. One of the problems with rent control is one group of people that are hurt by rent control that you don't really see much is people that would move into your city, who otherwise would move in if there were units available, are no longer moving in because one, rent controlled units are being overconsumed, so the people that live in them are never going to move no matter what because they have a really good deal. And two, the additional housing stock that's being created is overpriced because now there's a huge section of the rent controlled units that are just cut off from the supply. So supply of housing goes down, cost of housing goes up in the newly made units, and now you get a whole bunch of like middle class or working class people that can't afford to move into that city anymore, causing the inequality to grow, is the argument that most people put forth when they talk about.
Somebody ought to build a town that works. Somebody did.
I'm being facetious, but only listening. At other times, the paper argues that existing tenants are ultimately forced into poorer areas, and here they frame gentrification as a good thing, saying, this evidence is consistent with the idea that landlords undertake efforts to remove their tenants or convince them to leave in improving gentrifying areas. In addition, the rent-controlled tenants are more likely to remain at their address within the less gentrifying areas. So it's bad when existing tenants stay, but also bad when they leave? Gentrification...
Wait, I don't know if that was saying was bad or good at all. Maybe we should go read this whole paper. I don't understand that.
Is good, but also bad? I found this paper quite confusing, and it seems to be a go-to reference for opponents of rent control. With such a variety of competing effects, the authors eventually conclude that the overall effects of rent control are a wash. But the important lesson here is that ultimately...
God damn it. I need to... Do they really conclude that? I spelled et al. Here incorrectly. This et al. Guy has published a ton of papers. Congrats for that, dude. In this paper, we've studied the impacts of rent control on its tenants' beneficiaries as well as the landlord response. To answer this question, we exploit a unique rent control expansion in San Francisco in 1994 that suddenly provided rent control protections for small multifamily housing built prior to 1980. By combining new panel microdata, we find that on average, in the medium to long term, the beneficiaries of rent control are between 10 and 20% more likely to remain at their 1994 address relative to the control group, and moreover, are more likely to remain in San Francisco. Further, we find the effects of rent control on tenants are stronger for racial minorities, suggesting rent control helped prevent minority displacement from San Francisco. All our estimated effects are significantly stronger among older households and among households that have already spent a number of years at their current address. On the other hand, individuals in areas with quickly rising house prices and with few years at their 1994 address are less likely to remain at their current address, consistent with the idea that landlords try to remove tenants when the reward is high through other evictions or negotiated payments. We find that landlords actively respond to the imposition of rent control by converting their properties to condos and TICs, or by redeveloping the buildings in such a way as to exempt them from regulations. In some, we find that impacted landlords reduce the supply of available rental housing by 15%. Further, we find that there is a 25% decline in the number of renters living in units protected by rent control, as many buildings were converted to new constructions or condos that are exempt from rent control. This reduction in rental supply likely increased rents in the long run, leading to a transfer between future San Francisco renters and renters living in San Francisco in 1994. In addition, the conversion of existing rental properties to higher-end owner-occupied condominium housing ultimately led to a housing stock increasingly directed towards higher-income individuals. In this way, rent control contributed to the gentrification of San Francisco. Contrary to the stated policy goal, rent control appeared to have increased income inequality in the city by both limiting displacement of minorities and attracting higher-income residents. These results highlight that forcing landlords to provide insurance against rent increases can ultimately be counterproductive. If society desires to provide social insurance against rent increase, may be less distortionary to offer this subsidy in the form of government subsidies or tax credits. This would remove landlords' incentives to decrease their housing supply and could blah, blah, blah. I don't know why he would read this paper and would conclude that they said at the end it was a wash, but okay, that is very strange to me.
I found this paper quite confusing, and it seems to be a go-to reference for opponents of rent control. With such a variety of competing effects, the authors eventually conclude that the overall effects of rent control are a wash. But the important lesson here is that ultimately neither theory nor...
these kinds of conclusions make me not 100% trust anything else that the person says. I don't understand why he would say that this paper is washed, or why they say it's a wash. I think that's a pretty misleading way to state the conclusion. I think the conclusion of the paper clearly states that rent control leads to unintended policy things and are counteractive in terms of what they're trying to achieve. But, okay.
Or empirical analysis are going to make the issue of competing values and perspectives go away. When considering the effects of rent control, do we prefer rented or owned housing? Do we want higher quality houses which are more expensive? Do we want to favour existing residents over new ones? I don't have easy answers to these questions, so people want to want these people to believe what they do. The economist Dr. Mason argues that rent control research is in a similar place now to minimum wage research in the 1990s. A few well-formulated studies are displacing conventional wisdom, and this will likely expand as time goes on. Summarising a few studies similar to the Dynamo, which you can look at if you're interested in pursuing this topic further. So here we have two of the most important markets, labour and housing, where the pre-Econ 101 approach has failed to make sense of population policy. But what about more generally? Where has the influence of Econ 101 come from? And how does it affect our understanding of other policies like taxes and social spending? I don't think I can answer this one, so I'm going to have to hand over to someone else.
The influence of basic economics is everywhere, both pervasive and perverse. It really is why we cannot have things. For every communist call to make a political economic system ever slightly more just or livable for working people or the planet, there's a capitalist, an economist, a politician, a corporate news outlet, or an average Joe saying, that's cute, but that's just not how the economy works. James Quack calls the reductive implication of basic economics to explain all social phenomena in society economism. Economism relies on the abstract concepts taught in Econ 101 classes to explain why things are the way they are and why any attempt to redress the externalities of capitalism is futile. This is despite the fact that many of the concepts taught in increased by the distribution of ecology.
Why is Economics 101 so pervasive as a set of propositions? It's kind of odd that an introductory diagram based on obscenely unrealistic assumptions would have so much influence, right? Well, it often favours the rich and powerful, which, as Nexi pointed out, isn't a bad feature for a theory to have.
Okay. She's the same person who's on Philosophy Tips' horrible housing market video. Gotcha.
Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
No, I missed one. I fucked it. I hate black people. That's it. If that must be the case.
Enemy double kill. An enemy has been slain. An ally has been slain. An ally has been slain. Enemy rampage. Shut down. Aced. The enemy's inhibitors respawn soon.